fashion, high fashion.
The ship is going under.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just the song, but for everyone.
This is really bad. This is really, really bad.
And today we have Triangle of Sadness. Over here in Casa de MovieMan, we like to see films of all types, whether it's mainstream, or in this case, if it's kinda indie community. Though honestly, this film didn't really feel like an indie film. It had good everything going for it, production value and all that jazz. Director of Triangle of Sadness is a Ruben Ostlund, doing some research and seeing reviews, which I couldn't help but see reviews while getting research for this. Apparently he's a known quantity in the film and indie film community. There are some films that he's done that have received much critical acclaim, so his name carries some weight amongst cinephiles out there. Evidently such films as The Square and Force Majeure, which I mean I've heard of Force Majeure in passing. Alas, I have seen neither of these films, so I can't speak much to this director's filmography. Funny enough, for star power, I do know the lead, Harris Dickinson. I like the kid. He does a good job. The other gal, Charlby Dean Creek. I was very unfamiliar with her body of work, so she's been in films. I didn't really recognize any of them, but she's... Wouldn't normally add something like this into the review, but I did want to mention that something that I did accidentally skip over in my preliminary research for this. Unfortunately, Miss Creek has since passed as of making this film, August 29th of this year, so rest in peace to her. She was great in the movie, but unfortunately at only 32, she actually died before the film even came to fruition. But she has a nice little filmography behind her. So Triangle of Sadness, what is it about? It's actually a really interesting premise. So both main characters are in a relationship, they're a couple, and they're fashion models. Because they're fashion models and influencers, they get free shit. So they find themselves on this free luxury cruise on a yacht. So it's all these rich people on a yacht, and eventually through one turn of events or another, they all wind up, or most of them wind up, marooned on an island, and that's our story. So the film definitely is a commentary, a little bit on the fashion industry, but the most of the film is a commentary on wealth, on relationship dynamics, the wealthy, what happens when you take away the wealth part of it and you're reduced to just human beings in a survival setting. And of course the hilarity comes from that situation. A bunch of rich people marooned, you know, your money, your Rolex won't save you, so how will they function? What social dynamics and hierarchies are formed? And when I tell you hilarity ensues in this film, oh boy. Overall, this was one of the funniest films I saw all year. And I think a lot of the laughs just come from, look, I'm not gonna lie, trigger warning. In the second act especially, there's quite a few scenes, a lot of vomiting, a lot of projectile vomiting, and a scene or two with raw sewage, but don't get me wrong, I'm just letting you know out the gate that stuff is in the film, so there's a bit of a gross factor to it. But funny enough, scenes involving the vomit are some of the funniest in the film. Granted, there's other comedy that comes from the movie more naturally than old rich people vomiting up their super expensive food. I don't know if you call it a black comedy, but I definitely think it's like a drama, dark comedy. All these things that people like middle and lower class would think are ridiculous or overabundances or just not really things to do or represent or practices and all that. It's kind of the film shows you how much of that goes out the window and how much of that is just natural to the people that just have more money and power than they know what to do with. I thought the story was very interesting. Just the idea of it, little cruise, things go south, and now a bunch of people that are just having to figure out survival. The critique is enjoyable. I never thought it was too on the nose. It's just all these things that I guess should be obvious, but also things that aren't quite as obvious in that wealth gap. Film itself has, it's not perfect. I'd say Act 3 has some pacing issues here and there. I know the narrative in the film is meant to slow down, and it's meant to kind of, all the high times and the champagne and all this is now sunk to the bottom of the sea, and now it's just a bunch of people on an island, as I've said several times now, just bickering amongst themselves and figuring out who actually has survival abilities and training. And once that's figured out, then the power dynamics shift, and then this might not even just be the wealthy and the elite, but I like how somehow humans will always not only form these social hierarchies even in a survival situation like this, but they still manage to drag drama and relationship dynamics and stuff that wouldn't be strictly needed for survival, but still drag that into these situations. And this film exemplifies that. It's funny to me. We're like, it's really, this right now is our biggest concern. The ending is definitely going to leave people one way or the other. I like how it ended. I think I like that there's ambiguity in the ending, both for everyone involved in the plot, but as well as our main characters. There's some ambiguity. It kind of leaves it up in the air as to how things are going to pan out. And I don't know, it seemed fitting. It was executed in a way that was just enough where I liked that final step off the ladder. My opinion is, for a film on itself, I don't know what the budget was, but for the film by itself, I think it succeeded in exactly what it set out to do. I was entertained from start to finish. It's a bit of a longer film, I think 2 hours 20 minutes, which is a little bit longer than what most people are used to for a film of this caliber, but all the actors played their roles very well. I enjoyed watching the story unfold, seeing how it would all pan out. I laughed very hard out loud during Act 2. Granted, there were jokes throughout all 3 acts, but the middle of this film is so funny. It's so funny to me. But yeah, honestly, the more that I think about it, my only complaint is the 3rd act. There were a few moments throughout the 3rd act where I felt they could have, again, pacing issues, they could have like tightened up a scene or two here, trimmed the fat, maybe added something in to make things a little bit more interesting. But overall, this film works very well for what it is. I think it's a great comedy drama that kind of, I don't want to say it takes a stab at the wealthy. I mean, it definitely like roasts them for sure, both literally and figuratively. But I mean, that's kind of the point of this film, and I like that. Plus, I think it's funny. Triangle of Sadness, it relates to 2 or 3 different things in this film, but I don't have a whole lot to say. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this film. It might be one of the best I saw all year. Who knows? I don't know if it's still playing anywhere. I caught it on the last night it was showing at my local art house theater, so who's to say? But overall, I really liked Triangle of Sadness. I think the Act 3 is the weakest part of the film, but even then I use weakest in a very generous sense. It was a very good film. For all those reasons, I'd be tempted to give Triangle of Sadness a very high 4 out of 5. A very high 4 out of 5. It's on the precipice of perfection. I didn't really have much in the way of too many complaints about it. I think it's worth your time. If you're not into dark comedy dramas that criticize the wealthy, I guess don't watch it, but I feel like it's one of those indie films where I was wondering if I was gonna like it, and I ended up really enjoying my time with it. So hard recommend Triangle of Sadness. You get a chance, check it out. And that's all the time I have for today. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of, well, whatever movie I review. Goodbye, travelers.